Welcome back to Totally Unexpected. I'm your host, Chavie Brooke, and excited to introduce to you our guest, Sarah Immerman. Okay, Sarah is such a cool person. She's a licensed clinical psychologist. She works with young adults and teens on emotional dysregulation through DBT. You'll hear like a singer-songwriter, and she's always very community oriented and involved. She's very involved with HASC and NCSY. Just a really cool person. I actually feel really kind of blessed and honored to have Sarah in my life. And you will hear on the podcast how we got to know each other. And it's just a great story. And Sarah was one of the first people I interviewed. And I think one of the reasons is that she is so fun and is such a light and has so much to offer, and also is so easy that I felt really comfortable, like when I'm just like starting out and, doing this whole new project as a podcast. Like I was like, Sarah, I want to interview, like one of the first. So this is one of the first interviews that I did. Just turns out the way the schedule played out and all the different considerations we take into account when we drop episodes that we haven't dropped it until now. So we are a little further along into my podcast journey, but this is one of the first episodes. And Sarah just is so gracious and was so fun and easy to talk to and has so many really impactful messages to share. So I can't wait for you to listen and see you on the other side. Today's episode is dedicated by Rabbi Moshe and Dini Shiner and their incredible community at the Palm Beach Synagogue. Back in September, an amazing group of women led by their Rebbitzin, Dini Shiner, traveled to Montana for a retreat in our very own Paradise Valley. And I had the honor of spending time with them and enjoyed every minute in their company, hiking and learning and teaching and discussing. It was like a 3-day Farbrengen of Jewish femininity. I'm so touched that in recognition of our time together, they are choosing to say thank you, to express their hakaras hatov, their gratefulness, by dedicating an episode of Totally Unexpected. It really touches my heart, and I do look forward to spending more time with Dini and the Palm Beach Synagogue community soon, because they are such a cool bunch. And that experience was amazing. Welcome, Sarah. I'm so excited to have you here. You are one of those people that are so much fun to talk to. And thank you for making the time. I know your schedule is busy. So thank you.
It's so great to be here. I'm so excited.
I think I'm going to start by sharing how we know each other.
It's a fun story.
Fun story, right? So 3 years ago, I started a Tanya class on Zoom for the public. It was such a scary thing. I don't even know how it ended up happening. I feel like I started to talk a lot about Tanya on my Instagram, and a lot of people were always kind of showing interest. And I just felt this is a good energy. Tanya is so it's one of my favorite subjects. And I just felt the calling to share it. Now you fill in the blanks. How did you know to join?
Okay. It was height of COVID.
Correct.
Height of COVID, which I feel like is relevant.
Very relevant. Correct.
Very relevant. The world was upside down. And some point I read an article about you guys because I love looking into Jewish adoption and foster care. So I have done many a Google search on finding whatever articles I can about that. And I remember coming across the two of you and being like, wow, what a story. And they live in Montana. What? And then at some point you posted Shoshana's story. Mm-hmm. And I responded to that. I think that was the first time that we actually talked over Instagram. And I was like, this is so cool that you are sharing collaboratively with your daughter about this story and that she wants to share it. And thank you for what you're doing. And that was like a little bit more my professional role. And then we got connected, and then I saw that you were doing this, and I was like, well, I'm obviously making time in my schedule because I need that in my life.
Yeah. Okay. You obviously knew me enough to know that I was doing a Tanya class, and you became like such a consistent participant. And I cannot even tell you like how important that is when you're kind of putting something out there. And of course, like the beginning, it starts off with like 75 people are coming to this Tanya class. And then the next time it's like half. And then the next time it's like half, because it's really hard to commit to something like that. Like, I know if I was on the other end, like, I don't know if I would do better either, you know?
Chavie, I cannot tell you the amount of people that have texted me over the however many years you were doing it. Been like, I'm listening on, insert platform here. I'm like, I just heard you talking because you're clearly on class with Chavie. Like,
that's the best. One of the things that kept me going was knowing that it was recorded and people were coming back to it later, and like they weren't only showing up live because it's a, time zones and everything. It's hard to show up live, but it's hard to like put something out there and then you see the numbers dropping and still try to convince yourself that there's still value. But there's people like you. There was a hardcore group of people.
There was a crew.
And we became the Tanya crew and showed up every week. And it was so very special. And it definitely created a bond. And we got to know each other so well through these Tanya classes and the messages after, and the stories that we would share that the Tanya class would bring up, like, oh, like this reminds me of the story that happened. And then you even got to visit Montana like a few months ago. And that was just like the cherry on top. So let's start from the beginning. I want to hear a little bit about your childhood. I want to hear about your personality and like the things, like who you were growing up.
Honestly, one of my favorite little anecdotes about my childhood is that I was thinking a lot about life. I was always a very perceptive kid, was relating to people that were a lot older than I was, either that were a lot older or I was taking care of little ones. Those were kind of my comfort zones. And when I was 11, so I had gone to camp, overnight camp. And when I was, I think in fourth grade, I was given a journal as a birthday present by a dear friend of mine. And it changed my life because I am a journaler through and through. And I have been journaling since I was 6 years old, actually. So it was before that. Yes, it is wild. I think for my seventh birthday, it was for my seventh birthday, and it was a little bit before my seventh birthday that she gave it to me. So since I was 6, I have been journaling. I have essentially my entire life recorded. It's pretty wild. And I made this list when I was 11 years old of things that, like life lessons that I learned. I'm actually going to read them to you because it gives you such a snapshot of who I was as a kid. Yeah. So I'll read you. This is as an 11-year-old. So I was coming home from a summer experience that was really challenging. I didn't fit in very well with my peers. Actually, yeah, it was a really tough summer. And I was reflecting on it. And this is what I said when I was 11 years old. Look at the positive, not the negative. Don't make yourself not have fun. Try to make the best out of what's given to you. Life sometimes gives you hard situations. Just think about it for a minute and see what you can do to make it your absolute best. Friends can change. Always be open to change. It may be bad, yet it may be good. Wow. It helps if you just talk to people. I know. It's wild. I know. This is one of my favorites. If you dislike someone, try to take the time and talk to them.
I can't, like, you're 11. I don't understand.
It's wild. Then the last 3 are, if you appreciate what you're given, it will help you. Don't just think about your feelings, but others too. And don't judge people.
Okay. First of all, the things that you're at 11-year-old, you're saying are so profound. And I'm sure like lessons that you're still applying to your life today. Like whip out the 11-year-old me. Like what would the 11-year-old me tell me today when I find myself in a situation where it's challenging? But I want to know, what makes an 11-year-old think like that. Like I understand that it's a personality, but their life circumstance, like what is it that makes you so incredibly intuitive and thoughtful and insightful? And also, it's very clear to me in all the tips that you're giving yourself is that you want to be happy. Yeah. You're like looking, like if there's a theme, it's like, look at the bright side. Like you are determined to live a happy life. And if
Yeah.
anybody knows you today, like that encapsulates you, right? You're a happy
Yeah.
person, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting how like at such a young age, you were like, I'm having a hard time, but I want to live a happy life. Did you feel like you were acknowledging that things were hard, or you were kind of going straight to like, I'm going to make this okay?
I think I was acknowledging things were hard, sometimes in big ways. I have some letters that I wrote to my parents where I cried and then would circle the little teardrop, be like, look, I'm crying. Look how hard this is. So I was definitely acknowledging that things were hard. And I honestly, I often attribute it to having time and having the opportunity to reflect and to think. I think that having my journals, and they traveled with me wherever I went. I mean, they lived in my, in my drawer next to my bed, but when we would go on family vacations or go on a school trip, even, I would take it with me. It was just what I had with me at all times.
So do you think the journals were like what allowed you to process? Like it was almost like your best friend, right? It was like, this is where I'm going to go when I'm struggling, or this is my safe space. This is where I can say anything that I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still have them today.
Oh, yeah. I think all of them, and I've moved a lot and they now move with me. And they are the only box that I will not let any movers touch. Like they come with me. I have them in a little box and they sit on my passenger seat. At one point when I was in college, there was a fire I was on the second floor in an apartment building, and there was a restaurant on the first floor, and there was a fire in the restaurant. And of all of the things in my room, including my laptop, including tons of textbooks, my entire, all of my clothing, the only thing that I was worried about were my journals. Like I was like, I don't care about anything else. It's fine. But my journals are so precious to me.
Well, I want to understand more about that, because journaling became more and more, kids always had diaries and, everyone had these little things, but journaling as a like a therapeutic tool became very big, right? And there's a lot of forms of journaling that's like rage on the page, or like write and then throw it out, or you know what I mean? And it's obviously that's not the type of journaling that you were doing. You were really almost narrating your life in a certain way. And
Yeah.
so my question is, so that's happened and you're writing in your journals and you have them. Why do you think they're like so precious? Do you think because you look back at them and you want to you think you're going to forget, or is it just a reminder of like the kind of person you are, or what is it that makes you so attached to them?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think part of it is that I have never spent so much time on anything else. It also, I can't replicate them. I cannot replicate them. And it also is such a snapshot into what mattered to me and what was important to me at specific times in my life. So the first page of my first journal is this amazing, hilarious list of people in my class. And it says, this person is nice. This person is nice. This person is nice. Next page. This person is mean. This person is mean. And then I cross it out and I write kind of, and in different colors. It's hilarious. As a 6-year-old, that's what mattered to me.
Yeah.
Right. That was what was important. And over time, things have changed, and what I focus on changes, and what I care about changes. I also love the little abrupt shift of topics that, to me as an adult, I'm like, what? How did you not write more about that one thing? But I was more excited about the dinner that I ate than about this really big conversation that I had with someone important in my life, because it mattered just as much.
I'm thinking about this, and a part of me is I wish I did that. I don't have a great memory, so I don't remember detailed stories a lot. I don't have a great memory in these kinds of storytelling ways. I of course remember things about my childhood, but I feel like what a valuable thing. I feel like almost it reinforces the memory that you have, and you just remember it even more because you're constantly, it's like looking at photo albums, right? Do you really remember that, or do you remember looking at the picture of it, right? And I just feel oh my gosh, what a cool, such a special thing to have such snapshots of who you are. Do you think you know yourself better? Does it help with inner child work when you have journals like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Have you
I
done
think so.
inner child work?
Yeah, kind of in kind of different ways, but definitely understanding. I mean, that list of life lessons from 11-year-old little Sarah. I think is such like, I come back to that. I come back to even recently, I was thinking about something and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to look at that list. And I saw don't make yourself not have fun. And I understood it totally different as an adult. So I also write songs. It's also part of this journaling process. And I'm now writing a song about, do we listen to the things that our little child self like, and I actually have it, right? I have it written. And I think that's really the difference. Like, I'm not guessing who I was when I was a kid because I really know, and I really have it in writing that, little Sarah was saying, don't make yourself not have fun.
What do you think little Sarah meant by that? And what does adult Sarah take from that? I'm so curious.
Oh, I love that. I think little Sarah was saying, stop being so grumpy. Like it's all in your power. Like just have fun. Just let yourself have fun. Like don't make yourself cry because you're sad. Like just go have fun. And I think now adult Sarah says, where do you want to choose to put your attention? Because the more that you focus on the things that you don't like, the less you can see the joy and the beauty and the fun. And so you get a choice now. And what do you want to choose?
It's really cool. It's so funny because when you said don't make yourself not have fun, like it really brought up stuff for me because I have one of my kids has a really hard time enjoying life. And part of that process is I find that this child decides all the things that they aren't good at and they don't want to do and they don't like. I don't like labeling. I don't do that. And then you look at this list of all the things you don't do and you're left with very little things to enjoy, right? Especially if you're going to summer camp, right? And you're like, well, I don't do art and I don't do sports and I don't do all these stuff. And then it's like, and then of course you wonder why you're not going to have a good time. So we have this conversation a lot about don't put yourself in a box. Like, don't tell yourself you're this person that doesn't do so and so and so. Because what do you get out of that? And then all of a sudden, maybe one day you do want to try it, but you've already conditioned yourself to be this person that doesn't do that, right? And then you're not having fun, right? You have so many so few opportunities to have fun because you've put yourself in this little, like, this is the things that I do. So that's what it brought up for me when you said, don't make yourself not have fun. It's like, what are you going to be open to? Like, what are you going to allow yourself to do? And also I feel like it's some kids have a hard time really just enjoying themselves. I'm like, the message is like, it's okay to have a good time, right? Like a lot of these kids have whatever their narratives are or their attachment stories or, or the safety that they feel or don't feel really contributes to, am I safe to let my guard down, right? Am I safe to have fun?
And what does it mean about me?
Yeah.
What does it mean about me if I'm having fun?
Right. Does it mean I'm not a victim anymore? Does it mean that I'm not having a hard time? Are people going to understand me? Right. And I see that playing out. And it's really, really fascinating. And especially when you have children that, besides for not sharing your genetics, like just have such a significant narrative, right? And you see like, why can't you just have fun? Right. And and I've grown to realize that it's because it's not safe for them, right? Like it's just in one way or another. Now, the job of the parent-child relationship is to hopefully work that through. And I can't say that we're on the other side of that, but it's definitely been a process. And it's like, why? It's because there's a safety component to that. And for whatever reason, they're not comfortable enough either in their own skin, which is such a big deal, right? Self-esteem. Like if you're someone who has very, very struggles with self-esteem isn't going to let that. Can you imagine like them letting themselves go and like running through a water park, not caring what they look like and not worried about their bathing suit or whatever, and just having fun, right? There's so much wrapped up into having fun that you wouldn't think so. I mean, and as a kid, you kind of, maybe it was a little bit of a different perspective for you, right? And it coming from at it from a different place, but you were honing in on this concept of like, it's okay to have fun. You can have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also we live in a world where we call it the suffering Olympics.
Yeah.
Like I slept less than you and like, well, you have a harder life than me. So I don't get to be sad about the fact that my dog just died, right? Like we play the suffering Olympics all the time. And we get these messages of like, you have to suffer, you have to be unhappy because then you win.
Yeah. It's so true. It's like, it almost just comes from like a martyr. Like I am pulling through, even though this is super hard. It's so funny when you said like, I slept more hours than you. My husband and I do that. It's like, I'm so tired. I'm like, you slept 9 hours last night. You don't get to be tired. You don't get to be tired. I slept 3 hours. So I earned the tired title. It just reminded me when you said that. I was like, oh, God, I do that with my husband. On a little bit different scale of suffering Olympics.
No, but like how fascinating, right? Like in relationships, in with people that we do know, with people that we don't know, it happens all the time. There are so many competing forces that take us away from noticing joy and experiencing joy.
And I think it goes back to also, like I was just saying about one of my kids about feeling safe to have fun, but I think it's almost universal. Like, do we feel safe enough to share our joy? Right?
Mm-hmm. Chavie, can I tell you what I did yesterday? So I'm going to give a little bit of context. I'm a clinical psychologist. I do dialectical behavior therapy. And one of the main foundations of dialectical behavior therapy is mindfulness. And so as a clinical team, we do mindfulness practices. And I was actually thinking about this very idea of how we are so hesitant for so many reasons to share things that we're proud of, to share things that are going well, to share the joy. And so I had my team do a practice of first thinking about something that they're proud of, something that they've been working hard at that's been going well, and then share it with our whole team. And to hear what people were, the ways that they were qualifying it and like dancing around, like, well, I shouldn't be happy about this, or this isn't specific enough, or this is a stupid thing to be excited about, or it was so fascinating to me. I was like, since why are we so hesitant to say, I'm working on this, it's going well, and I feel great about it?
As a clinical psychologist, you have, is it like an ego? We're scared to have ego, or we're scared to come across as boastful, or what is it that holds us back? Like I feel, especially being on like a social media platforms, like I feel people in a one way, people think it's so vulnerable to share the hard stuff. I think it's even more, people have a harder time, and it's even more vulnerable to share the happy stuff, or your vacation, or your joys, or your accomplishments. I think it's harder for people to do that than to share like when you're going through a really hard time. Do you agree?
I don't know what it is like for everyone, but I do think it's helpful to think about how do people respond.
Yeah.
So if you share that you're having a really hard time and people respond by saying
Empathy, right?
Yep, then like makes sense that that's over time probably becomes a little bit less hard.
Yeah.
Right? You know how people are going to respond. If when you share something that's going really well, people look at you and say, you think that's going well? Or you think that's a big deal?
Yeah.
Or I don't think you really need to be so excited about that.
Right. Or the other thing that I think people are worried about is you share something really happy or going on in your life, and someone else says, well, my life sucks right now. Or your joy is really triggering me. Like, how could you be happy about this when there's so much suffering going on in the world?
We do so much of assuming everyone else's experience. And a lot of like, I think there's a lot of confusion about who's responsible for whose emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I'm responsible for my emotions, and Chavie, you're responsible for yours. Right? And so like when you share your joy with me, if I'm really struggling, I can be like, wow, I love that you're like, that's so cool that you're doing that. I love that. And then offline, maybe not with you, unless we have, a close relationship, but right. To then be able to say like, it's okay that I'm not super thrilled right now.
And that triggers either a jealousy or a pain or a hurt. I find that usually when people are really struggling with your joy, it's because it's something that they also wish they had. I can speak for my own journey. Like when I hear about people's pregnancies, it's been a journey for me, by the way, in that process. Like it used to be early in the beginning, I was really good at being really happy for people and ignoring what was going on for me. As I evolved and got older and started therapy, like I was able to understand that actually, no, this actually is hurtful for me. And there were times where maybe I was a little bit less, it was harder for me to hear that type of news. And then as that evolved, like it became more doable for me to be really happy for that person. And then also like tend to my own feelings around that. And I usually was in a bad mood the rest of the day. And like, I felt it. And it's so interesting because when I used to be in that place of like, oh, I'm so happy for you. And then totally ignoring which was true. It wasn't not true. Right. But totally the pain that it brought up for me, it ended up kind of lurking and kind of getting stuck. And then all of a sudden it comes out sideways and you're like, whoa, where did that?
I love that. I was just thinking that, Chavie. It comes out sideways.
Yeah. You're like, wait, where did that come from? And then by that time you're like tracing back something that happened 5 days ago. And who can do that? But what I really learned through therapy is if I give it the space in the moment that it needs, that part of me feels heard. And then I'm in it, like I'm in the mood or I'm in the grump, whatever, or I'm in the pity party for me, like not fair. But then it's done. Not done forever till the next, till it comes up the next time. But you're not carrying it around with you, and you don't end up having this big chip on your shoulder because you're processing for you, for yourself in that moment.
Yeah. And I think a big piece of that, at least for me, is that what has kind of maintained that emotion, right? Like that sadness of like, oh, this is something that I want that I don't right now have.
Yeah.
And then there's the sadness. And then what kind of keeps that going is like, it shouldn't be this way.
Oh,
it should be different.
Like this is what I used to do.
I shouldn't be upset.
Yes. Because as my family grew and as I got older, the feeling that would come from that is like, why am I even upset about this? Like I have a family, right? Like I shouldn't be feeling this way. I am wrong in some way. Like what's wrong with me that I have a family that I'm so grateful for, and I still feel this way about biological or natural births and pregnancies. And I did that for so long because it didn't feel okay to feel bad about it. And that's the other thing that you learn. It's like one experience doesn't replace another. And you can hold many feelings at the same time. And you can be grateful for the family that you have and still have pain for something that you never get to do. But that's so layered and it comes in stages. I'm so glad you brought that up because like I always say to myself and to my family, or it's like you have the feeling. And then when you have I shouldn't have that feeling on top of it. That's where like the toxicity comes in, right? That's where the trapped emotions start building when you're not even allowing yourself or you're not even giving yourself space to feel because there's no such thing as a wrong feeling. I tell my kids all the time because I deal with a lot of big emotions, right? It's like there's no such thing as a wrong feeling, but you do have to learn
what to do with it.
What to do with that feeling in an appropriate, safe way. Like I'm never going to tell you shouldn't feel that way, but I am going to say, well, you don't get to X, Y, and Z because you're sad. You're still responsible for your behavior that comes from those feelings. Even as adults, it's kind of hard to manage.
Yeah. And I think an important piece too is that not only are emotions okay, which I think is increasingly the message that we're sending to the younger generation, but I think also like emotions actually tell us things.
Yes.
They give us really valuable information. And when we avoid them all the time, we lose sense of who we are. And I think about this all the time. Hashem gave us emotions for a reason. Mm-hmm. We have them for a reason. Sadness gives us clues into what we care about, right? It's so powerful. And when we, instead of saying like, I shouldn't feel this way, it's like, wow,
why do I feel?
Thank you, Hashem, for sending me this message that I can actually understand myself and what matters to me and my neshama differently because you're sending me this message of my emotions.
That's really powerful. It lands because we talk a lot about guests that I have on here or just in personal conversations about like those worlds, because we live our world so publicly, like all the things that people are triggered about. And I'm like, a trigger is your message of like, what is bothering you? What's your path? What's your journey? What's your work? Right. And if you can turn your trigger into like a self-reflection process instead of like blaming it on the other person for triggering you, it's such a powerful tool. Like you said, it's like, it's gold. It's like, these are the clues of what's going on for our insides, our souls, our delicate little people that live inside of us.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, want to know a hot take that is not okay, but it's like probably not what the rest of the world thinks, but it's my own little thing. The word trigger, I think, can be used in helpful ways. And I think sometimes it actually sends the message to our brain that when this thing happens, I can't help but have a certain reaction to it. Or I can't help but think X.
So are you suggesting we use a different word?
So I like the word prompt.
Okay, I like that.
So,
when you sing or hear this thing, what does it prompt for you? Because you're right. Like when you say trigger, it's already a negative connotation. It's already like,
and it's like automatic.
It's automatic. And it's like, but I have a free pass because I'm triggered.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I love that. That is so powerful. And such a, these are the examples of like that, those little tiny like narrative shifts that make such a difference in how our brain is processing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did little Sarah. What about teenage Sarah?
Okay. Teenage Sarah was involved in everything, in not sporty things, but other than sporty things. That was not my vibe. I was really, really involved in choir, in both Jewish choir and choir in my non-Jewish school. I was I gave tours of my school, really involved in youth group. So did lots of things, really, 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 really busy, which was kind of my MO. I learned over time to do less, of that.
Well, did busy serve you?
For a while it did. And now I have just loved learning how to be a homebody again.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So you're very creative, right? So you're like almost like a singer-songwriter. I want to hear more about your singing career. And you were involved in, I feel like you told me once that you did a lot of, like you said, youth groups and CSY, I think.
So I did the conservative youth group.
Okay.
So I have been singing in choir since I was tiny little one. It's just always been my thing. My family sings. My mom was in choir growing up. And so that was a big part of my life for a really long time. And then I was also in, USY, which is the conservative youth group.
Oh, I want to hear about like in what kind of environment did you grow up, and also in connection to your Judaism? Like, where were you on the spectrum of very practicing, the big holidays, like what spectrum were you in your identity as a Jew?
I grew up in a home that was extremely Jewishly involved, very involved in both local Jewish community and also really involved in Israel. So we went to a conservative shul growing up. We were there every week. We had Shabbos dinner. We had Shabbos lunch. We had 2 sets of dishes. I went to a Jewish day school. I went to a community school. And always, I'm so incredibly grateful for this. My parents really instilled in me a tremendous love of being Jewish. My parents actually so I have an older sister and a younger brother, and we all are named, we have the same name in English and Hebrew. And they did that on purpose because they didn't want our Jewish identities to be separate from who we are.
Wow, that's beautiful, actually. That's really beautiful. Yeah. So you were raised with a big like Jewish identity, involved in Jewish life. And did that change for you over time?
So my trajectory was that I had always, even when I went to a non-Jewish high school, I hopped around. I went to 3 different high schools. First, I went to a Jewish boarding school in North Carolina. Then I came back and I went to a public school. Those both were a semester each. And then I went to an all-girls prep school for 3 years. And even when I was there in a non-Jewish environment, I said to
was the prep school Jewish? Was it a Jewish prep school?
No. But I said to them when I was interviewing, I said, I keep a lot of holidays. Will that be a problem? And I said this to a couple of different schools where I interviewed, and they said, no, of course not. However we can support you, let us know. Like, we love to support, however you want to practice religiously, which was so meaningful to me. And they kept up with that. They were amazing about supporting my religious practice. And this is a really important kind of thing that I took with me, is that one of my history teachers said to me at one point, Sarah, no student, it was so serious, said no student should ever be penalized for her religious observance.
True that.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks. So that was really important to me as I went, and I'll explain why. But so after I was really involved in friendship circle, really involved in an international Jewish high school choir called Hazamir. And there were ways that I was connecting with community, with what I loved in Jewish context. So that was very normal for me. This is again, like, where did I have this from? I don't quite know, but I knew that I wanted to know things. If I wanted to be a serious, passionate Jew. And I knew there were a lot of things I didn't know, but thankfully I knew enough to know that I didn't know them. And I feel really grateful for that. So I wanted to go to Israel for the year after high school. I wasn't exactly quite sure where. And my sister had also gone to Israel. And I actually, and I tell her this, so it won't be a surprise to her if she hears this, but I actually made a decision based on her becoming frum. I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't want that.
Became more religious.
Yes.
And you're like, not for me. Like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, and by the way, throughout high school, I had these like bursts of feeling, I felt very spiritually connected throughout, but these bursts of showing that in different ways. So there was a 6-month stretch where I was davening chakras every morning before school. There was a 6-month stretch where I was not eating hot dairy out. I would only eat cold dairy out. So making these tweaks.
Yeah. Like just, the inspiration of like where you're feeling yourself is at the moment and what you feel called to practice.
Exactly. And then, so I ended up going to Israel. Someone that I knew from my choir had gone to a program that was half learning and half music and art. And that felt like a really nice, I could do that. I felt like I could do that. I didn't think I had the skills to be in an all-day learning program. I was like, I can't do that. But I knew I wanted to learn. I knew I didn't want to become frum. So I thought, I think this is a good kind of middle path for me. The long story short is that I went there. I loved the learning part, realized I actually did have the skills and motivation to be in an all-day learning program. And then switched over to an all-day learning program. And more than thinking about me changing to be frum, it really felt like I found what I've been looking for. This just makes sense to me. It fits. So it felt a lot less like changing and more like, oh, this works for me.
Becoming you.
Yeah. And so there was that. And then I also went to Camp Hask, which is a really important piece. And when I was there, I was just like, oh, I'm sold. I need to be part of a community where this is the normal classic thing for a 19-year-old to do.
Yeah.
Count me in.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering through this kind of subtle, it sounds like it was a journey, right? And it was little pieces clicking into place over time. Is there anything that was really hard for you to give up from being very involved Jew, but not necessarily on that same, religious level? And now today where you are and where you were when you were embracing more of the traditional kind of rules and regulations, if you will.
Yeah. So when I think in the beginning, this probably won't be a surprise, but writing on Shabbos was one of the most challenging things to change.
That's like a journaler like you. I didn't even think of that, but like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah. In the beginning, I was like, are you sure I can't? Are you sure? What if it's in the, like,
it's for good reasons. Can I please do it?
It's for great reasons. Like, I don't need electricity. I don't need my phone. That's fine. Like, I just need to write. And so it actually took me some time to get, because I had been writing. Shabbos and Yontif was really my writing time. So I had to do, that was really hard in the beginning. And I think over the years, music has been something that has been really challenging. So when I was in high school, I would sing solos in front of a lot of people. And I got tremendous meaning and spiritual connection out of it. I think that's the piece that actually made it most hard for me.
So what is the narrative that you tell yourself, and how do you feel good about where you are now and not feel resentful that I can't do this thing that I love doing?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I ever felt resentful ever about it. I think I felt sad because it was like a way that I felt so connected. And it was hard to lose that avenue of connection, but I knew that it wasn't what Hashem wanted from me. So I had to do a lot of thinking about it. And there's I've learned different things about myself throughout the process. So in the beginning, it's halacha. And even if I don't understand it, I'm going to follow it. And that is a message in and of itself for me. That was really important. From there, I think I went to, this is not the type of attention that Hashem wants me to have. Let me think about other ways to express myself, to be able to get attention and care from other people that I think he wants me to have. Another one was about being aware of who's around me and like mindfulness of my surroundings. Because in the beforehand, I would just sing all the time. And once I started being more aware about halachos of koisha, I started really thinking like, who is around me right now? Can I sing right now? Can I not sing right now?
That's really, I love to hear because everyone has such a personal journey, right? In a personal way that they connect. And there's no right or wrong. It's just how it works for you. And I love to hear, like, it's my favorite thing is to hear, like, okay, like what makes you feel connected? What makes you pick? Did you ever feel like you wanted to be like a singer? There's the religious women singers who sing for women and do concerts for women. Would you ever do that?
If anyone wants me to, sure, you know where to find me. No, I will say though that it's definitely been a process to figure out how to use this way of connecting to both other people and Hashem, and what do I do with it? So I will say that in the past couple of months, kind of by chance, but also not by chance at all, I've been writing more and actually singing more and recording more, and it's been incredibly meaningful and grounding for me. And so I don't necessarily do the fast songs, which might be what people are looking for. I'm a little bit more on the
Soulful.
yeah, soulful Kumsitsi vibes. It's a lot of writing about and experiencing my relationship with God.
Well, actually, I mean, it's really quite cool because you're using your passion for writing and your passion for music, right? And you're kind of joining the two. I always get a little envious of people that have such a clear way to like express and process because it's not like that for me. Like I don't journal. I have a certain part of me that's a creative for sure, but I don't have the typical, like I'm not a artist and I'm not musical and I don't write. So it's like, I always find it so fascinating. And I almost get a little envious of like, wow, I wish there was such a clear cut way that I feel that helps me express myself and process. And I think it's a gift and it's cool because I have a lot of siblings who are very creative and talented in that way. And I'm like, how come I didn't get any of those? But it's so funny because when I look back at what I do, it's so funny because it's very creative in a different way. And I go and process on Instagram for the public. I'm like, I'm just going to process out loud. So that's an interesting thing to navigate as well. Okay, so take us to today. So you're a clinical psychologist, right? I want to know like what inspired you to do that. That's like really impressive. Where are you in your life right now? What's adult Sarah doing now?
So I ended up becoming a clinical psychologist because there were a lot of things that I really loved to do that fit under this category. So I continue to work at Camp Hask, and I love working with people with special needs. That was one branch of it. Another branch is that I learned partially through my role as an NCSY advisor that I love teenagers and I love working with teenagers. And I learned from
very special gift.
It is just there's something so special about it. I'm so grateful to love it so much. And I know it's not everyone's thing. And I always say, what a beautiful world to live in where God created us to all to be different and love different things. So both to this point and to your last point about we all have different things that work for us. So I work specifically with teenagers and young adults who have either features of or full diagnoses of borderline personality disorder. So it definitely is not straightforward or easy. We actually, today is our first day we just launched our day program. So our teens and young adults will be with us every day from 9 to 3. I was working in a residential before. So
that's a really loaded job. Like, I think, especially with borderline personality, like it's such an elusive diagnosis. And I find in my experience, like psychologists and therapists have very shy away from actually giving a proper borderline diagnosis.
I have some thoughts about that matter.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that matter. But I just find that borderline is tricky. It's tricky. And which probably makes your job never boring, right? And there's no like, yeah, you have borderline symptoms, but it's just so different. And you really have to be on top of your game.
Yeah, I think part of what I love so much about it is that we practice what we preach. and that you can really live by the principles that we teach, that everyone's doing their best and they need to do better.
By the way, I learned that quote from Brad Reedy, who runs a wilderness program in Utah, who wrote 2 amazing books, or maybe he wrote more, but I know of 2 of them. And one of my favorite quotes is, any given moment, you are doing your best and you can do better.
Funny that you bring him up. Literally yesterday in a parent group that I run, one of the parents brought that quote in, not that quote, but a different quote of his and his ideas. Yeah. So I also do a lot of work with parents and supporting parents of kids who have emotion dysregulation because we know that it is an incredibly, incredibly stressful experience. And so I do a lot of supporting and teaching parents, which I absolutely love. And to your question before about like, what is it like? It is, yeah, it's never boring. It also, when you have the treatment that works, it becomes a lot easier. And I find that that's what DBT is. DBT stands for dialectical behavior therapy, which I mentioned before. If anyone's interested, let me know. I can point you in the right direction to learn about it, but you can also Google it. But yeah, it's really meaningful. Really, 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 really meaningful and fulfilling. And I don't know how, I can't envision a life where I didn't have a meaningful day to day. So I just feel really grateful for it.
I want to ask you what your favorite part of the job is and your least favorite part.
Okay. Favorite part, I think, is that I get to genuinely be me. I don't have to pretend like I'm someone that I'm not, or pretend that I don't have emotions, or pretend like I'm not a really sensitive person. There was a moment that I think I kind of portrays this. So in the previous place where I was working, it was residential. And every time someone left, we would have a community goodbye. And there was one, I call them kids, they're teens. One kid who was like, I never cry and I'll never cry. And it was like his badge of honor. And I was like, sir, that is not a badge of honor here. We're just not going to be super excited for you for that, because you're just avoiding your emotions and it's keeping you really, really stuck and miserable. So what if you did cry? What would happen? And he became very, very close with this one kid, and it was his goodbye. And I, at one point, got teary because it was gorgeous. It was a gorgeous goodbye. He was talking about all the things that he had gained from being there. And I started to cry, and I looked over at him, just gave him a little nod, and he just started sobbing.
Chills.
Yeah. I was like, dude, it's okay. It's okay to cry.
That's your badge of honor. Wow.
Yeah.
What's the hardest you find challenging, or the thing that you struggle with?
I think it would be really nice to be able to very quickly click a button and have people that I care for very, very deeply not be suffering anymore. I haven't yet found that button, if anyone knows of it, but it is incredibly challenging to watch people suffer and to not always be able to help. I mean, they have to also, it has to be a partnership, and sometimes it's not the right time. And I will say, this is something that I don't know that people know, but I think about the people that I've worked with long after I have stopped working with them. I've learned things about myself, about the world. I think about things differently because of them.
I just say that for someone who has had children in residential treatment, that is an extremely beautiful and comforting thing to hear, because you entrust your kids to these environments and you just hope that the people they're with care for them and think about them and see them in the way that, is not just negative, and not for only their challenges, but for who they are. And so as a person who's had more than one child in a residential treatment, when I heard that, I've never heard you say this before, and I never heard anyone say this before, but it was just that means so much on the other end, So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I say it all the time. I hold them all in my heart. I hold all their parents in my I don't usually use words like that, but things like that. But genuinely, I think about them. I care about them.
Hope they're doing well.
Oh my gosh, yes. And when we get updates that they are doing well, my goodness, is it the most exciting thing. And it's just so happy.
So how long do you have to go to school to be a clinical psychologist? This is just pure curiosity.
So my program was 5 years. Yeah, it's between 5 and 7 usually.
And so personally, so that's your career, your job, and you're mega successful. I always love hearing your insights, because I just feel like you have such a combination of understanding challenges, but also having that optimism and that love. There's just always a positive kind of spin on things that you have in your personal life. Like where are you up to? What's going on for you? Like, tell me.
So in my personal life, I live in Boston. I came here for a postdoc for a fellowship, and then I stayed, and I love my community here. It's a really special place with really special people. I am not married, so dating is part of my life, which we could do a 5-set series of podcasts about my thoughts about dating.
We have a little bit of time to do some of that. I want to hear what it's like to be on the older end of the spectrum in our circles. And let's call it what it is, right? In our environment, in our system, right? It's kind of built for young marriage. And I want to know what that's like to be not married in a system that doesn't really provide a lot of support and care for people who don't get married in their early 20s. Like, what does that look like? How does it feel?
Yeah. So I have gone and, it's been a road, not a straight one. And in the beginning, I was just like, what am I doing wrong? Like, how come why am I going to so many weddings? What am I doing wrong? What about me is broken? And over time, I have learned how to surround myself with people. Well, I will say I was living in New York, and I made a choice to leave Washington Heights, where there were a whole lot of people in my age range, in my like quote unquote stage of life. And for semi-external reasons, but really those external reasons were pretty easy to blame, I really wanted to move out to the suburbs. And I'm a suburb girl. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. That's just where my soul is happy. So I moved out to Roslyn, which is in Long Island. And I know it is not the Five Towns. And for those of you who, right, sometimes it's very close to Five Towns. No, it's not very close to the Five Towns, closer to Great Neck. And I moved there by myself. And it was life-changing, because I went from seeing myself as not having something to being someone who had a great life.
Wow.
And who was bringing something to the community, that people were excited to ask me questions about my life. And I went from, I think, being viewed, or at least my perception was that I went from being viewed as a quote unquote single to being viewed as a person.
Is it made subconscious? Like, the society has us viewing people and circumstances, and how important and empowering it is to be going from I'm a single person in this world who isn't doing what everyone else is doing, and I'm like other, to I'm a person that has value and I bring a lot to the table. And it's not on whether I'm married or not.
No. And I think over time, I also realized, and this has been kind of more recently, in the more recent years, not only is it okay that my life is this way, this is exactly the way that God planned my life to be. I am exactly where I am meant to be. And part of the reason that, we could talk about lots of professional things as professional things, but they're so personal for me, partially because it means so much to me to have meaning and fulfillment in my job, because I'm not raising my own babies, right? And I'm not devoting time to working on my relationship with my husband. And I often say this, it's something that's very comforting to me, that right now, God is entrusting me to take care of his children in a different way than I had expected. And that's okay. It's actually more than okay. It's exactly where I am meant to be.
Yeah, it's exactly what your mission is. I relate to that in my own life, right? Like, thinking my life was going to go a certain way and having biological kids, because it's also like what the system is built for. And my life didn't go that way. And I have 5 wonderful adopted children. And I there's ups and downs, and there's the journey of that. But in general, what grounds me is that this is what I'm meant to be doing, right? This is my mission. This is why I was put in this world to accomplish. And I very much relate to what you're saying. Like, I'm supposed to be taking care of these children. I'm supposed to be doing this in my job. Like, I am positioned in the perfect place for me to be my best self. And I think when we get it out of our own way, and I'm not saying this is a very hard thing to do. It's very hard to be not married in this environment, right? And you want to be married. It's not like you don't want to.
I think over time it gets easier. And I don't mean that as, right. And even as I say it, I'm like, oh, people are going to say, well, you don't want to get married, or you're not working hard enough. Ha ha ha. That's what I'm going to say to you. Like, go and I don't even know. But it gets easier when you develop the skills to A, know that this is exactly how life is meant to be, and B, find joy along the journey.
Yes. I like, do you want to live a happy life? Right? Do you want to live a happy life? And now, what your job, every person in this world, is to figure out how to live their best life. I feel like happy is like whatever, but how to live their best life with the circumstances that they're in the moment. And it doesn't mean you can not want them to change. It doesn't mean that you hope it's not that way forever. It just means that in this present moment, God positioned me right here and I want to live my best life. So how am I going to do that? And for you, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to move. I need to change my environment a little bit. I need to play to my strengths. Like I need to be in an environment that people see for who I am and not for my circumstances. So we do have to take control over how you're going to make that happen.
Yeah. And I think I like to think about it as the goal isn't happy. And the goal is actually not even for me, the way that I think about it for myself, is not even like my best life, but like, how can I live my life to be most closely aligned with the mission that God set me on this earth for? Right? Like, my happiness is not paramount. And if I think that my happiness, ooh, I'm getting really revved up here. But I think that it's our job to figure out what that mission is, and then it's our job to chase it like it's our job, because it is.
I love that. The thing is what would, if you were to leave like a message, if you were to like leave, people with something to really ponder, it's like, how do you, okay, I know the answer for me, but I do think people do struggle with understanding what their mission is.
Yes.
How do you tap into your soul on such a deep level to know what your mission is and to really
get ready. We're gonna loop back around here, which is that our emotions give us really helpful information. When you can think without judgment, what does feel good to me? What doesn't feel good to me? What do I like? What do I want? Notice those are not shoulds, right? We're adding judgment here, right? What is it that makes me feel like I am closest to God? And noticing that and not judging it, but just noticing it. When we actually are able to notice our emotions without judgment, it gives us such valuable information, I think, about what our mission is, because God created our soul. God created our souls uniquely to experience the world in different ways, right? We are so, so, so lucky to have different preferences, different opinions, different things that work for all of us. That's how God created us. And so not paying attention to that is taking us away from figuring out what our mission is, right? The more that we think about what things should be or how I should be responding to something, the more that we're ignoring the exact thing that God
pulls us further away from who we are and what our purpose is.
Exactly. And so I think it's getting rid of the judgment, throwing the shoulds out the window, paying attention to what feels good and genuinely, right? Not what should feel good, but what do I want? What do I like? What are things that make me feel connected? What are the things where I feel excited?
Yeah.
Right. And then using that information to inform figuring out what our mission is, because God created you to have that specific set of likes and dislikes and preferences for a reason.
Yeah, that is really good advice. When you were talking about judgment, it triggered a question inside of me that kind of takes us back to your career for a minute. Did you feel judged in any way or not taken seriously in any way by being in a career that was so children oriented and helping parents deal with their children and not having had the experience yourself? Did you feel that parents were like taking you seriously or were writing you off? And I know like in the line that you're working, and I understand like it's really because it's DBT and you're dealing with, kids with borderline personality disorder or addictions or whatever, like you have skill set to do that. You don't necessarily need to be a parent to be able to help these kids, but especially when you're bringing in the parents and you're working in so much with your parents, did you find that was a problem at all or not at all?
Honestly, not, which was shocking. It was a big fear. It was like, oh my gosh, they're going to not trust me. But I have found that at the end of the day, when you're working with a person and you see them as a person, and I don't presume to know everything. My gosh, right? I don't pretend.
Like you're a very pragmatic and also humble in the positive way. Like you're like, I don't, you're like, let's try this together. You're not coming in as like this all knowing, like, I know what's best for your child. I feel like they're in that field, you do come across those types of practitioners, and they can have kids or not have kids. That's an automatic turnoff, right? Like you don't live with my child. You don't know the days in, and then it's very easy for you to come give this like really snazzy suggestion that you think is going to solve the problems. And I'm like, that doesn't work. From my experience is that I actually like many of the people that work with our family, like I don't even know what their family home life is like, right? But if they present as an empathetic and thoughtful and wants to include me in the process, and take what I have to say seriously, and they have really thoughtful, insightful suggestions, and are also like, hey, maybe this will work, maybe this won't, like that I think is.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I run a parent group. I'm the director of family services. I'm building a parent program, and I was really involved in supporting parents in my other role. And it is quite funny that I often say, well, we as parents, and I'm so clearly the youngest person by a lot, right? They all have kids that are teenagers or older. And so it is pretty funny. We do also a lot of role plays where I'm the teenager, and they're like, how in the world do you know what my kid says to me at home? And I'm like, well, I work with your kids.
Oh, I know exactly what they say. This is not a guessing game.
No, I do great eye rolls and like great, like dad,
I love that. I want to ask you one last thing. The parent teenage child relationship is loaded and it's hard. I find myself having, like, my family's getting older. We're not a young family anymore. We're all headed in towards those adolescent, preteen, teenage years. And I find them that navigating them is like whiplash, like between each child, figuring it out. And then you have multiples children, and then you have children, let's say with mental health, additional challenges. Like, what do you think from a professional perspective and from your experience is like a very powerful tool to have while you navigate your relationship with your young adult, teenage, adolescent child? Like, it's so hard and it's so tricky. And I know that you facilitate a lot of these groups and a lot of these connections. And so what do you feel is like, this is something that's really powerful to implement with your relationship with your teenager, or I don't know, some little like behind the scenes insight?
Okay, I think I have three things, but if I go over or under, here we are. Number one is, I think one of the best things you can do as a parent is learn skills to manage your own emotions and do it off screen. Do not ask your child to be managing your emotions for you. I think that would be number two, which is that it is not your child's responsibility to manage your emotions. It is your responsibility as a parent to manage your emotions. And that's hard. It's so hard. It's so, so hard. And of course you will have an emotion, right? Or have a reaction. And can you actually say to your kid, this is mine. This is mine to deal with, and it's not yours. So that's another thing. Another thing is that I think the idea of being willing to admit mistakes is really huge, and repair mistakes. Instead of saying sorry, I like the idea of a repair, which is I'm going to acknowledge what I did to impact you, or I'm going to ask you how what I did impacted you. And I'm going to let you know what my plan is so that I don't do it again, or I decrease the chances that I'm going to do it again. That's another piece.
Yeah, it's so huge. And it's such a common thing that people talk about, but it's also so much easier said than done.
Oh, yeah.
We have to figure out how to do it. It's our job. And it's so hard to go back, revisit this really scenario that you just don't want to talk about again.
Totally. And you're modeling for your kids. It's okay to mess up and you can come back, right? And in a relationship where there is love as the foundation, we can do this, right? And so if you mess up in a relationship that's not with us, right, you can go back and say, oh, I did something and I didn't mean to. I also talk about the difference between intention and impact. I think that can be a nice way to think about our behavior with our kids. Because of course you don't mean to.
Right.
Another little tidbit to think about is that I often say, especially for dysregulated teenagers, Offering suggestions, not only are they not going to hear you, it will actually make things worse.
I'm so happy you said that out loud because that is
Yeah. So I often say to the parents that I work with, I say, here's your rule of thumb. Do not offer any problem solving, suggestions, or ideas unless your child has said, yes, I would like to hear those.
I feel like that's the best one by far because the other ones you hear more often. This is something that's not as openly talked about because we're also like in the age of like gentle parenting and where we're also like we're giving our kids lots of choices, right? All the time. You want the blue one or the pink one or this one, And I always found that in my situation that was really overwhelming for my kids and it just made things so much worse. But then when you adapt it to like teenage years, and I'm guilty of it. Like they come to me and their drama about something that happened in school. I'm like, oh, I have all these recommendations, and they freak out. Same thing. Like I hate when my husband does that to me, right? When I'm mad about something and he's like, well, do you want to solve the problem? Like, actually, no, I don't want to solve the problem. Like, no, I want to be mad and angry and have drama around this thing. So
yes. I often suggest that people say like, I have some ideas. Do you want to hear them? Totally okay if you don't.
Yeah. So I started doing that with my kids. I don't always remember, but when I'm present and enough to be like, okay, are we just like talking and I'm listening? Or at the end, do you want to hear my thoughts? It's actually surprising how often they say, I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. And then if you do it, you're showing them when you tell me something with your words, I listen.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's so powerful that we can show our kids that when they use their words and they let us know what they want, we're willing to do it. I think another really, really powerful thing to do is to let your kids know what it is that you're working on. And so letting them know, I'm working on managing my emotions off screen. I don't want to do that. I don't want you to be responsible for that. Or I'm working on problem solving less because I know that I do that sometimes, right? And sometimes I've even gotten teenagers to be able to say like, Mom, you're doing the thing again.
Ooh.
And then,
yeah, I find myself when I'm really revved up or I'm really having a hard time with a scenario and I'm very activated and for good reasons. Either there was like physical violence involved or really offensive things that are happening. It's really hard to show up in a loving, caring way in that moment or even in 20 minutes, right? So I find like it happened to me the other day where I was having a really tough time with one of the kids and I was like, love you and I need a minute because that was really hard for me. So that's one of the things that I find I try to do because you want them to know that like you're not like what I struggle with all the time is you want them to know that you're not writing them off because of their bad behavior, but you
exactly
also know that their behavior was not okay and it was not appropriate or acceptable. So it's like, how do you manage those two things? It's like, okay, I love you and you're a good kid. And at the same time, like that was rough and I need a minute, So it's about me. But this was so fun talking to you. And I came away with so many thoughtful things to think about. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks for having me on, Chavie. This was so fun.
Okay, so after you listened to this episode, I have some thoughts to share. First of all, like I told you in the intro that this was one of my first episodes, I had to listen back to this episode before I recorded the intro outro. And let me just say, and I think I've said this before, listening back to content that you produce, especially for me, my podcast, is it is a form of work that is very humbling, especially because this is one of the first episodes that I did. I can see like very significant growth in my abilities and in the way that I run and interview and, host these podcasts. And it was hard for me to kind of reconcile and see the difference and the change and to kind of publish an interview that was from so early on. Sarah was amazing. And I feel like we need to hear more of her. And at some points, I was like, I wish I talked less and heard more of Sarah. But I am really grateful to be able to reflect on my growth. At first, it felt like a very negative experience and I was very down on myself. But now when I really think about it, it's really such a blessing to, first of all, be able to do this podcast and to see growth. Like sometimes we do things and we don't grow and we don't get better at it. And that's way worse, right? Than like noticing where all the places that we've gotten better at. So it is very vulnerable and it is definitely sometimes uncomfortable to share things that we've already been better at, but we're sharing them from a few months ago. But I am very comfortable and grateful for the audience that I have and know that they will give me so much grace and they understand. And irregardless of all the ways I could have done better, the conversation is great and there's so much to learn from Sarah. And my favorite part about Sarah is her just light and her personality and the way that everything that she does and she says is through this place of just like effervescence. I don't know, just like that's the word that comes up for me. So I thank Sarah so much for being that person that I, started off with and made me feel comfortable and confident. So that's my little reflection. The other thing I want to let you know about is that since we recorded this podcast, Sarah has written, I don't know, like 15 more songs. And I will put the link if you ever want to listen to her music. It is so beautiful and soulful. I will put the link in the show notes so you can tune in and listen to her beautiful music where she really does express and share. And like, as you listen to the episode, like how invested she is in her diaries and in her writing, like that's another extension of that. So look for that in the show notes. And the other the other little thing that I have to reflect on when I was listening back to the episode is we're talking about writing and journaling and I like so casually say that like I'm not a writer. And I look back at that and I'm like, what? Like I literally write a Substack essay every week. Like I am a writer. And it's actually taken a long time for me to identify as a writer. I always pushed that part of me away. I was like, I'm not a writer because I'm not as good as this person, or I'm not as good as that person, or I can't write as easily like my husband, or, it doesn't come as naturally to me. But I'm leaning in and I'm owning the fact that I am a writer. But what I think I was referring to when I said I'm not a writer is that I've never journaled. And I've always wished that like I kept a journal or a diary, and I've never been drawn to that. And even now, like when I'm like, okay, I'm going to journal, like I want to be better at like writing something every day. It just never sticks. So I think that's what I was referring to when I was like, oh, I'm not a writer. But I was like recognizing how ridiculous that sounds as I actually do produce content as a writer. So that was my other little reflection from the episode. And okay, let's go right to some questions. Okay, the first question I have is: do you take podcast suggestions, podcast guest suggestions? Of course, I always take suggestions. I can't promise that I will follow through or it will for sure happen. There's a lot of things that I take into consideration with the people that I have on here, but I'm always open to suggestions and I'm always open to having amazing conversations with people that you think make sense on this podcast. So for sure, send them in. Okay. The next question is, if you wrote a book, what topic would it be about? Oh my gosh, look at that. Writer. If you wrote a book, here I am. I've always wanted to write a book. I really, really do feel like that is something that I want to do. I think just like the podcast, like it will hit me when it's the right time. I don't want to force it. I don't want it to be a negative experience or something that I feel like I have to do, but I want it to come from a sense of ease and like inner knowing that it's the right time. I have no doubt that it will happen, God willing. And I mean, I think what comes naturally to me would be just like about my life and my life experiences and the stories and the unexpected things that happened along the way and how they have shaped my life, changed my life, forced me in a good way to confront, the things that I needed to work on and continue to work on. So there's a lot to say in that area. And it's always on my mind, always on my mind. And I struggle with knowing how to write that book and what approach to take and like how to even like I think the thing that scares me the most is like how do you even start writing a book? Like one day you just like start writing, like it feels so overwhelming and it's like so like like a mountain of like where do you even start and how does this even work? So definitely have work to do in that area and just being I think part of it is just being brave enough and yeah, but it's definitely on the bucket list. Okay. I got actually like a few questions about books this time. So I'm going to consolidate it into one question. Like, okay, what was one of the first books that had an impact on you? And currently, what are some of your favorite books? That's a really hard question because I read a lot. But I think one of the first books that I can remember having an impact on me, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, like I don't have a great memory. I think I actually said it on this podcast. Like my memory of like details of my childhood is not that great, but what I remember really loving and having it like reading multiple times as a kid was The Pomegranate Pendant. I don't know if anyone knows that book, but it's one of my favorite books as a kid and a young adult also. And I loved like the Avner Gold series. That was amazing. Those books were like I've read so many times. And I'm actually not like a book repeater. Like I don't like to read a book twice. But those books like I read as kids and like I reread again as a teenager and again as an adult. Like so as far as like impact as a child and the first books I can remember having an impact on me were those books. And currently, I don't know if I can answer that question. There's so many books that I really, really like and think about. Let's see if I can name a few off the top of my head. I really liked from Kristen Hanna, one of my favorite books is The Great Alone. I know a lot of people like her other book, the World War II book. What's it called? Nightingale. Um, I, it was a good book, but I liked The Great Alone better. I really liked Lessons in Chemistry. I thought that was just like such a great book. Nonfiction, I was really impacted by this book called Hunt, Gather, Parent. And I really also liked The Comfort Crisis. And I'm trying to think if there's any more like novel books that come to mind. Oh, there's so many. I feel like I'm doing a very bad job answering this question. Um, I do have, I do post periodically some of my favorite books. I'm going to have to come up with a list and post it so I can do a better job answering this question. But those are the things that like stand out for me. And that is a wrap. Have a wonderful day and can't wait to be here next time.